Hello and welcome to this episode of The Rest is Entertainment Questions and Answers edition. I'm Marina Hyde.
And I'm Richard Osman. Hello, Marina.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Shall we answer some listener questions?
Let's do that. Angela Sharp would like to know, I was listening to a news report the other day talking about the lack of access to any food or water for the population in one of the war zones and wondering, when war reporters are living in conflict zones, how do the team manage to get access to food and electricity?
Thank you, Angela. It's rather multifaceted because most conflict zones are very different. Most war zones are very different. I spoke to my good friend Ramita Navai, who's won like 1 million Emmys for war reporting and foreign reporting. Last thing she did, she smuggled a camera into a woman's prison in Afghanistan as she shot undercover footage. So she's always doing...
She's amazing.
...extraordinary things in extraordinary places. She's always in a conflict zone. Whenever I speak to her, it's almost like she's a jinx. So she said, well, look, there's a series of different things. So frontline can mean a number of different things. If you see some of the slightly softer, newsy things of somebody in a trench, by and large, they're very safe and they're away from any of the action. If you're actually in the trenches, like in a war zone, so she's got a friend of hers who's in Ukraine at the moment, then if you're in the trenches, you're embedded with a military unit. And so your rations are whatever the military unit's rations are, and your safety is whatever their safety is.
You're not always embedded, but if you are embedded, this is how being embedded
works. If you are on the
works.
front line, you will be embedded.
Yeah.
If you're in the trenches, you're embedded. There's no other way of getting to where you are. Most of the job of an actual war reporter is off to the side where unusual things are happening. And if you're in somewhere like, when there was fighting in Mosul, for example, the whole of Mosul is not a no-go zone. There will be pockets of Mosul where if you're a war reporter, that's where you go, that's where you stay, and you can go and report on the action. Or you'd be in Erbil and you'd drive in every morning because you'd be in territory that was safe and you would go as close as possible to the front line. And Ramita says anytime there's any situation like that, where there's a sort of ever-shifting front line, a huge sort of shanty town builds up of almost like a Wild West prospecting town of people coming in and setting up stalls. He said there's a madam who goes from war zone to war zone and sets up brothels. So whenever there is war, there is like this weird sort of subsystem of people who come in and make a bit of cash out of it because they know there's going to be news crews and film crews and freelancers and all sorts of people there. So that would be the situation there. Otherwise, she talked about when the militias were chasing ISIS out of Iraq, and she's embedded with one of the militias. And on there, she said, well, you don't know where the front line is because you don't know where ISIS are. So you essentially go from village to village with the militia, and ISIS wouldn't be there. And then you go to the next village, and they would have just disappeared. And she said she remembers going to one village where ISIS they disappeared so recently. She sat down in a trench and pulled a blanket over her, and it was still warm.
God.
And she could see the ISIS flag kind of 300 yards away. So all conflict zones are different. If you are absolutely at the front line of it, you're either with soldiers or fighters of various sides and you have what they have, or you're slightly further back. If you went down to Afghanistan, for example, and you're a reporter, you'd stay at Camp Bastion. You might be driven out to a front line and then driven back to Camp Bastion. So you'd be looked after in that way. But in the more sort of complex war zones, take Mosul or something like that, where everything's ever changing, there's just a whole industry that builds up around war and builds up around conflict. And, it's aware that whenever there's anything like that, there's a huge group of people suddenly come into town. And so you can usually find something. But the people who are, the Ramita Navais of this world, who will fly out anywhere and try and tell stories of people whose stories aren't being told, they will find what they can where they can. They're not, by and large, going along to 5-star hotels and having breakfast and then popping down to the front line, although there are certain war reporters who would do that.
Very tactful.
That's literally only if you're in, the trenches. You can be very near the front line and you'll find, somewhere to be and somewhere to stay. The other thing I would say about most foreign correspondents is they make incredibly good contacts with people in conflict zones and people whose lives have been overturned and people whose livelihoods have been stolen. And the ones I know, the ones I talk to, do everything they can to help and find ways to funnel funds to people and find ways to funnel help as well. It's very hard to do that job and see the things you see and not find a humanitarian response inside you. So you tell the story of the war, which is all well and good, but the aftermath of the war is usually the story. A question to you, Marina, from Owen Keenan. Recently, the Minecraft movie trailer came out. They can't say we don't have range, can they? We've gone from Mosul to Minecraft very quickly. Recently, the Minecraft movie trailer came out and has been heavily review bombed. What room is there for movie reshoots, re-edits and changes after a trailer comes out?
That Minecraft movie trailer is absolutely hated. It's got like millions of dislikes on YouTube. The trouble is when you have these kind of very engaged fan bases who are sometimes gamers.
Yes.
Is it a coincidence? they are the audience to whom you are trying to sell the film. So you have to do something about it. I have to say, trailers are absolutely huge still. And the way they come to people now is in different ways to how they used to. But people are seeing them on YouTube all the time and they have a huge number of views. They are made by people who are not the director and who are totally designed to just do trailers. But I was talking to a big director who said that on his second day of shooting a big franchise movie, he was asked, we need the shots of the trailer. And he was like, sorry, the trailer? I've just started shooting. That's day 1 or 2 for a teaser trailer shot. It might just be one shot of, I don't know, a weapon or a car or whatever it is. And it sets the tone really early. And then, obviously, as you know, there are several trailers for every movie now. The first one for Gladiator 2, that's about to come out, people hated that. And not because of anything they were seeing on the screen. And as I said, it was very Denzel heavy because he's going to get you out to the theatres and you might stay for Paul Mescal or whatever it is. But it was because it had Kanye and Jay-Z, that No Church in the World. And people thought, no, when I think of Gladiator, I think of classical music and blah, blah. And I don't like the way you've done this at all. Now, Sonic, which you also mentioned, Sonic was really difficult because they had a load of toy deals. And if you want to start injection molding that plastic, you've got to do it quite really early. They're not doing it the night before the movie comes out. So it was a problem with the teeth and some other stuff with Sonic. They knew that they were going to really jeopardize those toy deals and that it was going to be very, very expensive. But obviously, it is your audience. And they did it and it became very successful. And it's now on its sort of third iteration or whatever.
So it's almost like focus grouping.
It is, but you can go too far. Snakes on a plane, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, everyone saw that trailer and was like, sorry, Samuel L. Jackson is just going, I'm done with these fucking snakes on his fucking plane, you know. And everyone was like, this is amazing. I want to see this movie. But these people were ironists, Richard. And so everyone was like, oh my God, this is really like, everyone loves this movie because the trailer just went viral. And so they pumped more money into the movie because obviously it hadn't quite been finished at this point. They pumped more money. They didn't even make back the marketing right for this movie, okay? It cost much more.
People liking things ironically has cost an awful lot of money to an awful lot of people over the years. By the way, semantically, I'm very, very interested in M-fucking.
Yeah, so am I. While I was saying it, I was like, why didn't I say it the other way? As you know, I just can't get any of these things in the right order. It's just a sort of...
a mother effing, is that better? That's all sort of worse.
I basically swear a lot, and when I have to try and censor it, I don't know how to do it. What's wrong with the word mother? It's the other one that mother effing. That's how I should have done it. Yeah,
that's quite bad as well, though, isn't it? There's people listening to this with kids in their car. As always, kids, we've said it a million times, adults mustn't swear in front of kids. Kids mustn't swear in front of adults.
And look, I don't even know how to do it, kids. I strongly advise us to just bleep everything, please. In post-production on this,
the whole
bleep
thing.
Everything. It might cost a lot of money, and we might have to go back on some of our toy deals, but please, can you bleep everything?
No.
I tell you what, randomly I've just remembered in terms of trailers and changing things, that sometimes it gets really close to Return of the Jedi was called Revenge of the Jedi till really, really late. And there were posters up in shopping malls and you can still buy Revenge of the Jedi posters. They're real, like, you know, collector's items. And George Lucas changed it really near at the end because he thought that a true Jedi was too classy, would never see revenge. And so really right up to the last minute, things are changing. But yes, they are heavily retooling aspects of that Minecraft movie because if the fan base don't like it, the existent fan base, you're going to have a problem.
Oh, God, imagine being involved in that heavy retooling.
Of the Minecraft. Actually, I'm not even going to say anything in case I get the wrath of all the Minecraft fans. But, I mean, it's sort of building blocks, isn't it? Can you not just... Anyway, I'm not going to get into it, but they are heavy retooling there. One
of my absolute favourite things of your show, The Franchise, is just the constant just changing things on the hoof as to who's available and when, and just, you know, the world of big franchises and what they need from you, and just, you know, suddenly throwing new problems to directors. And, oh my God, imagine just being the Minecraft production
but
team.
in the end, people are just shooting things in these franchise movies with a sort of big green nebulous shape that... When everyone stopped arguing and when the fan base has stopped threatening to kill you, you will CGI in a weapon that is acceptable to the fan base, the plot, the various stakeholders in this scenario. So yeah, everything is so last minute.
Oh, art. Listen, still turns out some good stuff. There's a million different ways to make a good movie. And a billion different ways to make a bad one. Yes,
it is better to change it. And the Sonic thing, it ended up being very successful for them. So sometimes, you know, the fans have a point. But not if they're threatening to kill you.
This episode is brought to you by Sky, where you can watch unmissable shows, including the thrilling new Sky original series, The Day of the Jackal, starring Academy Award winner Eddie Redmayne and BAFTA Award winner Lashana Lynch.
She is terrific. It's based on Frederick Forsyth's acclaimed novel, The Day of the Jackal. The series is a contemporary reimagining of the classic thriller that sees an unrivaled lone assassin, the Jackal,
It's his day.
take on one last job, putting his secret life in extreme jeopardy. He's under relentless global pursuit from secret agent Bianca. The hunter has become the hunted.
Oh man, I hate it when that happens. It's one of my absolute favourite books, The Day of the Jackal. It is brilliant, and I can't wait to see these two do it as well. The book itself, and you can see from the trailer as well, is taut, it's propulsive, it's got everything you'd want in a great thriller.
That's right. Lashana Lynch, who, by the way, is superb in every single thing she does, plays a British intelligence officer, again, who won't stop until she has taken the Jackal down.
Eddie Redmayne plays the elusive assassin, the Jackal. Can't be that elusive if I know that Eddie Redmayne is playing him. I could work out where Eddie Redmayne is if I had to.
It's less of a good movie, though, is it? Just you sitting there with your phone trying to work out where Eddie Redmayne is.
Yeah.
It's done.
He's in Soho. But it's a real belter, and these two, I think, are going to do it justice.
Espionage, subterfuge, violence, they will stop at nothing to achieve their goals. Watch the new Sky original series, The Day of the Jackal, on Sky now. From Miranda Crease, he says, we're following your advice and watching Rivals. Well done. However, in doing so, we have become fixated on the nuances of, I knew people would do this, on the nuances of regional ITV franchising in the 1980s. Did the clergy really have the prominent role in franchising decisions that the programme suggests it did? Was there some sort of public vote to decide who got the franchise?
Honestly, it's amazing. I mean, by the way, I'm still one episode out. We're really trying to eke it out. It's so good.
So good.
I don't want it to finish. I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, to have the battle for a regional ITV franchise.
Can we just explain what franchises were for people who haven't watched the show?
Absolutely. So if you haven't watched the show, so ITV used to be split into 15 different companies. You'd have the big ones, which were Granada, Thames, and so on. And then there'd be these regional franchises, in the southwest, the southeast, Tyne Tees, things like that, Borders. And they would make regional programs and then essentially tie into the rest of ITV. So some ITV shows like Coronation Street would show across all of the network. The regional franchisees would make the news programs, magazine programs, occasionally make shows that would go across the whole network. So Anglia Television used to make State of the Century, things like that. So it was 15 different companies that were all ITV, all of which had a sort of opt-outs, but all of which made things for the network as well.
And they came up for renewal every
10 years or so. And they were insanely lucrative at the time. Like anything in the 1980s, they were insanely lucrative.
80s money.
Because, advert money from the 80s, it's a lot, I would say. And so Rivals was written in the mid-80s, and the franchise run, which I'm guessing that Julie Cooper is thinking of, was 81. And, the stories of it are amazing. Anyone who ever bid for an ITV franchise, there would always be the incumbent, and then say every 10 years, sort of new consortium or new consortia would come together. And what she does in the Rivals, which is, people sort of going, well, I'm going to find a local vicar, a local restaurateur, is exactly what they all did. Pretty much all of the consortia were led by some white boy who would then team up with a lord. They'd get somebody who was like the Earl of somewhere. So say it's for the West Country. They'd literally look through who's who and go, well, who's an Earl who lives in Dorset? And talk to a number of Earls until one of them said, yeah, sure, I'll do it for 8%. Yeah, of course I will. They would then have to build a sort of coalition of people from all different areas.
Supposedly the great and the good.
Supposedly the great and the good. But it would be, there was one story, I think it might have been the West Country franchise in 81, and there were two rival consortia, and they were all after the same people, all of them. And by the way, they would do this because it's the early 80s, they would sit with who's who and go through it, find anyone who lived in that franchise area who did anything that was of any interest whatsoever, and then go to their house and talk to them. That is the way they would do it. But there's a brilliant thing about almost like a transfer between these two consortia that someone said, I will give you my lord for 2 of your bishops. Those were the sort of coalitions they were building. They would get local hoteliers, they would get head teachers of primary schools, like anybody to be in these consortia. To answer the question, was there a public vote? It wasn't. It was decided by the IBA. But
who were their own kettle of fish.
Oh, and that was full of lords.
Do you think that was beyond reproach?
Yeah. That's the Independent Broadcasting Authority. Interesting use of both independent and authority. And they would be full of lords and what have you as well. So it was absolutely that wonderful 80s thing of, I need a member of the House of Lords. I need some landed gentry. I need someone who owns a shop. I need like 3 people who've made a television program.
Yeah.
I need like someone who
There
made
are lots of people you need.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, I mean, we've got someone who can do drama, is it? Is that strand?
But yeah, it would always be, oh no, this guy, I know that this guy did like a kids cartoon in Wales in the mid-60s. So he's come on board.
Yeah.
He's director
He's going
of
to run our
programs.
religious programming. Which was, by the way, a big part of it. You had to have all these offerings. And therefore, you had the person who was going to do the religious programming, and you had the bishop to say, we're very pleased with this offer of religious programming.
It feels like such a weird idea for a drama, but it was absolutely real, absolutely true. And it's exactly what happened. You know, even in Rivals, you know, they talk to the guy who owns the bar.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's what they would do.
Yeah.
There's wonderful bits where they're sort of saying, so I think, okay, what have we got? So we've got the church leader. That's great. We've got the leader of Somerset County Council. Okay, that's really good. We've got someone who once directed a television advertisement. Great. We got the leader of a car dealer. I think we've got that covered. We've got an actor. Good. That's the arts. We've got a sports star. That's brilliant. I tell you, one thing we are missing is a woman. And that's genuinely, there's an amazing article I was reading about, and they just say, okay, we need to find a woman. So they would go off and find one. But yeah, it's really, I'm not surprised that Judy Cooper, having lived through that 1981 franchise row, I'm not surprised she thought, oh my God, this is an amazing idea for a book. Because it's
especially for someone who's interested in the social comedy of a county or a fictional county. It just is a way to bring all of those different types of characters in, and just in a completely credible way.
It's essentially almost all of the consortia were a series of big fish in small ponds with 1 or 2 small fish in big ponds.
Yeah.
And that was the consortia. And most of the franchises got renewed, but every now and again a usurper would come through because they had the right collection of bishops and head teachers and people who'd once read the news on Tyne Tees coming together.
Netflix will end up copying it.
Alistair Otto has a question for you, Marina. Have a guess as to whether I like Alistair Otto as a name.
I think you love it.
Very much so. Thanks, Alistair. Alistair says, when watching Sky News the other morning, it struck me that some poor folk have to do their day jobs in full view of us, the viewer. Why do broadcast channels like Sky and the BBC do this? Are there certain expectations of those who are doing their day job adjacent to live TV studios? And do they have contractual terms which outline they will work in a live TV environment? He's talking there about the people who are in the background of shot in the news studios, you know, shuffling their papers and wandering about.
Not the news presenters saying, I decline to be filmed. Well, you have accepted a job as a news anchor, so...
That would be pretty bad.
Fine, pixelate me. I totally agree. Like, if you're in the background sort of picking your nose, you're not very happy about it. The way they get around it is, first of all, Sky News, that is the office, and it wasn't that long ago that someone was doing some item about the latest piece of skullduggery by some water company. And then in the background, you can see this woman really losing her temper. I don't know what about, potentially about the latest piece of skullduggery by the water company. But so Sky do actually have, Sky News I'm talking about, because, you know, that's the office environment you see. The BBC, sorry to break the illusion here, because my children, by the way, used to watch it, my husband works at the BBC, and they used to watch it trying to see if they would see their father. It's like, he doesn't work in the news bit anyway. But you know, when you see that big thing at New Broadcasting House...
he hasn't had a job for 7 years.
No, he just goes out.
He's in the park.
We actually have a joke that's where he is. The New Broadcasting House one, the BBC News one, is a loop. So if you watch it...
You're kidding me.
No, it's a loop. You can see the same guy go over to the same desk with the same piece of papers. I'm sorry, it works better that way. Can you imagine? Given that every story about the BBC is completely demented, anything that happened in the background of that, there would be like 4 Daily Mail reporters whose job was simply to watch the background to see if anything vaguely...
Well, hold on. This feels demented. Something vaguely weird is happening in the background.
Are you saying it's fake news?
Well, no, I'm saying it's fake news background.
The BBC is selling us a simulation. Okay, so... In any case, in terms of just to slightly widen your question, Alistair, if your office, say, decides to have a Dunder Mifflin or a Wernham Hogg style office documentary made in it, you can refuse because that's a different type of content, and you can say, I don't sign the release form. And there has to be, for those type of shows, there has to be a release form. But for journalism, there doesn't have to be. So if you're filming on a street because you're saying a crime has taken place or whatever, and there are people walking past in the background, that's just bad luck. That's journalism. It's got separate rules. But if they film,
right? They
film, you don't have to get the sign off of everyone who's walking past, because you have to make allowances for that. Otherwise, you couldn't really have outside broadcast. In terms of filming your office, you can say no and say, I don't want to be part of this.
That was, we were watching, literally every single one of my anecdotes now starts, we were watching Below Deck the other day, and there was like a brief shot of someone else with the captain, and we're like, oh, who's that? I mean, obviously works there. He's a guy who doesn't particularly want to be on camera. You think, oh, Of course, it would make sense, actually, that the captain would have more help than the hapless people he's got around him.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like that. And often when you watch documentaries, some faces will be pixelated because...
Those people have said, no, thank you, I don't want to be in it, but they think the footage is too much gold. There's a level of pixelation that people will accept.
And a sort of third way, which is if you're filming something live somewhere, you will often, even as a studio audience, you'll have a sign on the door saying, by walking in here, you consent to being filmed and you consent to that film being on television. So there's like a blanket
They have
agreement.
signs up in the airports when they're doing any of the custom shows saying, by the way, we're filming today, and if you walk past this sign, you've basically signed a release form.
Oh, I had that. We once went to an antiques place and they were filming, I think, Dickinson's Real Deal. And it said there...
Did you just wander into it?
If you walk past this line, you are consenting to being filmed.
I love that you were in it, like uncredited.
I don't think they filmed. I think they were doing like one thing and Dickinson, the Duke himself, wasn't there.
Oh.
So I think they were like filming later in the day or something. But I thought, I'm going to stand this side of the line, but like really loom. Make sure like I'm in the...
You do loom.
Make sure I'm in
that's
the...
it. You're one of the great loomers.
Make sure I'm in the back of a shot, but that you can't use me. That was a whole day's filming. Oh my God, they're the word. If you ever film...
6'7" pixelated individual in the back of this. Is that...
Yeah, hold on a minute. Is that... You know, those things, if you're filming anywhere, people would just start shouting the second that you start filming. When we were filming Who Do You Think You Are? We were filming in the back street in Brighton. This guy ran a jewellery shop. When we started filming, he kept coming out and going, if you give me some money, I will walk back into my shop. And we're like, right, okay, sorry, we're just filming one thing. So you start filming again. He goes, guys. You're like, okay, do you know what? We're going to walk 10 yards down here and film it somewhere else. It's amazing, isn't it?
I wonder what money you would have settled on. It's really interesting. Like, what's the price?
Yeah, what's the price? $4,000?
Yeah, I know. He would have asked for that.
Yeah, people like that, if you go, well, listen, what's it worth?
Would have done it for £4 as well.
Yeah.
But somewhere between those two figures.
Anyway, we've really gone off track.
Sorry, we've gone off track, yes.
Oh, the ITV news studio is sort of in a dungeon and there's someone whose job it is every day to go outside and see what the weather is so they know what background to put, like a sunny background or something. So literally someone has to go outside, see what the weather is, come back in and tell the news.
Wow. That's just reminded me, there was a This Morning in the Phil and Holly era, obviously no longer, where they pretended to be doing a live on Christmas Day. Why would you do that? Just say it to people. And people got really angry. First of all, what are you doing watching This Morning on Christmas morning anyway? But they could see the people sort of commuting to work. And by that stage, I think it was in lockdown. And I think that they changed to some obscure tier system. All these things that happened in lockdown, I can't remember. And people were really annoyed, like, well, you wouldn't be allowed to be doing that. So the illusion of the Christmas Day ITV This Morning was broken.
I tell you what, Alistair, we've answered about 8 different questions there.
I can't remember why we're doing a podcast. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I've really gone, down some rabbit holes. Here we go with book adaptations.
Okay.
Caitlin Kingsford would like to say, for book adaptations, how do you decide to do a film versus a TV show? With the rise of Netflix and TV series, is the film adaptation dead?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. When I sold the rights to Thursday Murder Club, which would have been, it was before it came out, so let's say 5 and a bit years ago, certainly the received wisdom was don't do a movie. The received wisdom is everything is Netflix, everything is bingeable box sets.
What about if Mr. Spielberg's company asks you to do it? In which case, do a movie.
Well, quite. So, for me, there was an auction and various people came in and said, we want to do a TV series of it. Amblin came in and said, we want to do a movie of it. And because the prevailing wisdom was don't do a movie, I thought, maybe it would be fun to do a movie.
Yeah.
So for me, I decided a movie because it was Spielberg and because it was slightly counterintuitive. But you absolutely had the choice. It could have been either.
And lots of people now, lots of authors or whatever think, my work is best suited to a really long form thing. But, if you look at something like those Lord of the Rings movies, which, are far better than the TV series that is going at the moment.
I call Lord of the Rings the Thursday Mordor Club.
I love this. And there are certain things that you just think, obviously Jurassic Park, why do I want to watch 10 episodes of that? It's brilliant as a movie. There's certain things like that. I do think that some things that were done as a movie, like, okay, this is a famous movie disaster. the Bonfire of the Vanities, the Tom
Yeah.
Wolfe, but that would have been, I think, amazing because it's sort of about all the different layers of the city and how they're kind of all interconnected in New York in the 80s. And in some ways, it's the quintessential sort of 80s New York American novel. But it was originally it was released every month in gobbets like Dickens in Rolling Stone. Now that, I think, would have been really well done. We didn't exist at the time.
100%
would have been miles
Netflix
better.
Yeah.
And the film is a disaster. And actually, by the way, if you really want to read a really good book, there's a book called The Devil's Candy by Julie Salomon, which is, she completely lucked out. They're going to make this movie of this iconic book, and Brian De Palma's going to be the director of Bonfire of the Vanities, and is like, yeah, come and watch me while I make this movie. So Julie Salomon turns up and has a ringside seat to one of the biggest, most expensive, most obviously sort of disastrous movies, flops. And if you want to read a good book about it, I really recommend The Devil's Candy. And that other thing we said the other week, TV really devours plot.
Yeah.
So you need a lot for a sort of long-form television series.
Well, that's the interesting thing. So Thursday Murder Club, you would think there's probably, what would it be? 4.5 hours if you were to do the whole thing. So that's too long for a movie and too short for a 6-parter. So you either cut it down and do a movie and take the advantages of that, or you expand it out and make it as a TV series.
But you're sensible to know that, because lots of people don't know that. Lots of people think, well, hang on, you'd have to do almost every chapter as one Sunday night episode.
Yeah.
Lots of authors don't necessarily see that.
Yes, it's interesting.
Because you know about television that you do.
But also, in that world, there are people whose job is to be an agent for film and television and for books. And, there are good people out there who will give you good advice about stuff. The new novel, We Solved Murders, I'm doing it as a TV series instead, for no reason other than I did the last one as a film. And I thought, well, that would be an interesting way of doing that. But you do think, well, be great to make an 8-parter. Is there enough in it for an 8-parter? So the problem is, as you say, expanding rather than contracting. And books are a very awkward length, by and large. Something like Bonfire of the Vanities is perfect. It's such a long book that actually you make 8 hours of that, and and
the nature in which it was
happy.
Released originally, it's already like Dickens designed for that big episodic stuff.
Yeah, exactly that. So it's an interesting question. One of the other things I've noticed, because I'm not going to get involved in the film, I have to leave other people to do that. But the thing I'm interested in, of course, is does it give publicity for the book? And so are there new readers out there who will hear about the book and read the book? Because the book is, the book I love, and I want as many people as possible to read it. And the one thing I've noticed over the last couple of years is TV series, by and large, don't really sell books. I mean, it'll give you a bit of a bump, but even something like Rivals, it's sold more, but it hasn't sort of gone crazy.
It used to be such a big thing. Do you remember? They do a new cover for as soon as the TV series came out. They do a new cover with the
and they
pictures
still do.
of people in.
They still do.
Yeah.
It's just it
used to
doesn't
drive,
go crazy,
but it doesn't now.
But movies, weirdly, because of what we talked about earlier with trailers, because the trailer industry is so huge that suddenly these trailers are going out that people are watching kind of 2 minutes, like watching a 2-minute advert for your book. So, they're not necessarily going to see the film, but hopefully they will. But they will then go and buy the book. So the trailer industry that movies has, in a way that, and TV does have it, but it's a slightly different vibe, that seems to sell books, which I think is very interesting. But in answer to the question, I would say it's a case-by-case basis. Some books suit film, some books suit television, some books only get film offers, some books only get television offers. So, you take what's there. But absolutely, both of those industries are voracious buyers of rights to books and of stories and things like that. And it's up to the author. The author does get to choose which they want to do. But as you say, it's sort of quite a difficult choice to make. But there is an industry of people who are very good at making that choice for you if you want that choice made for you.
I love that. How interesting. 2-minute trailer for your book. Yes, please. All right then, everybody. I think that's about us for the week.
Yeah, that was fun.
Very fun. Shall we see you next Tuesday?
See you next Tuesday, everyone.